and welcome to this week's episode of the Scrum Down NBC Sports Rugby podcast. I am your host with the most, Alex Corbicera, and it is great to be back, everyone. Lots to talk about. The Rugby World Cup 2021 in New Zealand is heating up. We have the final this weekend that is live on Peacock TV. It repeats on CNBC with Abby Gustidis and Lee Diffie in studio. Do not miss that one. And to review the semi-finals from the weekend, which were incredible games, please go back on Peacock TV and watch those if you haven't seen them. The two of the best women's rugby matches I've ever seen. And then to look ahead at the final this weekend, we have World Cup winning legend from England 2014, Kat Merchant, on to break that all down. And then we have good friend of the pod, Chris Jones from the BBC, to talk through all the autumn internationals which are going on in the Northern Hemisphere at the moment. But let's get into our chat with Kat Merchant and the Rugby World Cup. And we are joined by former World Cup winner, England star herself, Kat Merchant. Thank you so much for coming on the Scrum Down. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. Looking forward to being on here.
No, definitely. You're over in New Zealand on the ground in Auckland. You know, what's the buzz been like, you know, around this World Cup and these games coming up with a big final?
It's been genuinely amazing and really different, and shows how far the women's game has come, because when I've been here previously as a player, not much interest been around. There's not been, you know, we played at Eden Park, which was amazing, but hardly any people are in there. Whereas now you go around the town and there's just a real buzz about it. The women's game's advertised on buses. They've got players, like key players, like all over like walls. And just going into coffee shops and random people will be like, oh, you're here for the rugby. And there's just loads of chat around it. And it's an incredible atmosphere and a big buzz around it.
And, you know, quickly just touching on it, we're hearing the final at Eden Park is sold out. How incredible is that an achievement for the women's game, and how excited are you for that for this weekend?
It was absolutely massive, because you've got to think about the population of New Zealand being like 5 million people, and yet they've managed to sell out Eden Park for a women's game, a standalone women's game. So it's incredible. And actually, you know, the semi-final, the New Zealand-France game was electric, because the French crowd really showed up, and they're both quite hostile, so there's a lot of booing, but it was incredible. It felt amazing. As a neutral watching it, I was like, well, I was commentating, but we'll say watching. But yeah, it was amazing.
Well, that's awesome. And then just before we actually get into the games, like on a whole, you know, what have you made of the rugby being played? To me, it just looks like a huge evolution of the women's game, and it's just surging with the amount of skill, detail, sort of well-rounded game plans. It's been impressive to watch.
Yeah, and definitely the top 4 teams. So the teams that made the semis, clearly they are a cut above the rest, I feel, at the minute. So other nations hopefully are going to invest into the sport, so we get some tighter games in the pool stages, because there was some big scores like there is in any kind of World Cup at the beginning. But moving from quarters into semis, I genuinely believe those semis were the most competitive of any Rugby World Cup I've seen, men or women. So they were fantastic semi-finals.
I agree. I thought they were incredible. It really just, they took the whole tournament up a notch, because you now have equally matched teams going at it in knockout rugby, where I do agree with you, there was a disparity across most of the quarterfinals, very predictable. We here on NBC were hoping that the USA would have a decent go against Canada, but they showed to be a clear step above from that team as well, consistently beating them in both games. And I think that's really the next step for this game, is closing the gap and allowing it to be more competitive from those quarterfinals, and even at least one group game per group at least, which is a sort of a decider as such, which we got with England, France. But other than that, we didn't really see.
Yeah, well, New Zealand weren't really tested until the semi-final, because they came through their pool and smashed it, and, you know, smashed Scotland, smashed Wales, like just moved forward, relatively untested. So then obviously they had France as a big game, but yeah, as a whole, those 4 teams just were incredible to watch, and you could just see how tactically they play, but they all have different game plans as well, which I find really interesting. I know we're not talking detailed rugby yet, but the final, New Zealand and England are so polar opposite in how they play. Yeah. And that's going to be really interesting to see.
Exactly. We'll get into that shortly.
Yeah.
But no, definitely. I'm buzzed to talk about it. Trust me. Let's cover these semi-finals real quick. And, firstly, we'll go chronologically. So England first v Canada. I wasn't sure what to make of this because of England's just set piece dominance across the board in these competitions. I expected them with Canada having quite a set piece orientated game, possession, control, similar to how England had been playing. I expected England to not blow them out, but be a bit more dominant. But you've got to credit Canada, how they turned up, they played, and they really tested the Red Roses, which is probably exactly what they needed before a big final. But I thought Canada exceeded my expectations in that game.
Oh, definitely. They were the dark horses. They flew under the radar approaching the semi-final. And knowing what I know about rugby and the two teams, I thought England would win by 20 points. I was like, this semi will be all right. But really the big one's the New Zealand, France, which is going to be close. And then they were playing, and there's not many times I'm nervous watching England, but I started to go, oh, this could be a real shock. If Canada come and take this one. But I think they matched them up, definitely. But more than that, they actually showed vulnerability in England's defence, which we have not seen at all. But you're right. I'd rather they had that test in a semi-final than go through smashing Canada, play New Zealand, and then find out there's vulnerabilities in the defence because you don't have time to fix it. So they'll go away. They're a smart team. They'll work out why, they did get cut through, and they'll have chances to fix that, obviously, before the final.
No, and I think you got to credit Canada. I think they showed that if you make your tackles and you can stop England's drive, then they have to be a bit more creative and they don't blow teams away with massive scores. And then you've got Canada's first try was outstanding, from deep. What a way! It looked like it potentially the game could be getting away from them because England were getting in their sort of rinse, wash, repeat mode, dominating territory, winning the majority of the kicking exchanges, profiting off of, poor kicks back and getting into Canada into their 22, 12-0 up. But then Canada come back with an absolute scorcher and then back up another one. And all of a sudden you're like, it's game on in this semi-final.
Yeah, it was an incredible turnaround moment. And, Sophie de Goody, the Canada captain, basically in an interview beforehand said, oh, yeah, England are on this, this winning run and it's amazing and everything. But at some point that run gets broken. And why can't that be us tomorrow? And I just love that attitude. They genuinely believed they'd go out and win it. And they played like that. Aleri, the fullback, was outstanding, I thought, because the one area, as you alluded to there, is the kicking game. England's kicking game's better. So every kick, Canada lost 10 metres. But actually, when they were confident and they decided to run it, and they did do that from their own half as well, they asked questions, and they were exciting to watch because they were confident, they were fast, and they supported each other really well.
No, agreed. And I thought they had good physicality in the 22. Like when they needed to be confrontational with England in that tight exchange near the line, they found the momentum, which eventually led to some of their tries. And I think that's the question with England is this tournament, majority of their tries had been around set piece, dominance, control. But then, the bit of magic from try from inside their own line, that's a sign of a high caliber team. Do you know what I mean? Big game, under pressure, and they pull out one of the tries of their tournament, if not the try of the tournament so far. And it was an incredible sort of moment, I think, that galvanized them a little bit as a squad as well.
Oh, well, hugely, because Canada were really on the attack. It was a really momentum switch in the game. They looked like they were going to score again. And then it's a turnover from the breakdown, hands down the line. I've sort of been in the camp of the wingers need to get more ball this whole tournament, because it's not that you're taking anything away from the forwards game. And if you score 24 tries off rolling balls, then fantastic, go do it. But I think by moving it wide as well, you just have more options. So I've been going on about that before the game. So for me, seeing them go from one winger, making an amazing line break, stepping 3 players, beautiful pass out wide to the other winger who gasses it and scores, that is my kind of rugby. I was like, yes, here we go. Because
Cap Merchant-esque. Cap Merchant-esque, that's right.
Yeah, I love that. But it just shows there is more to their game, and it will, moving forward to the final, it will ask more questions of New Zealand's defence. If they just think they've only got the pack to deal with, then actually if they've come up with some really good game plan to deal with that, at least England can show, actually, we've got the gas out wide as well, and we can play with width.
Yeah, and I thought England just had good experience at the end just to close out the game. It wasn't the prettiest of games, but when you're playing semi-finals, knockouts, it's just about getting the win. And I think they had enough. They secured it. They march on to the final. All right, let's look at the other semi-final, because this one was outrageous. Outrageous. Like, I didn't know which way it was going to go. I thought initially with, France having, I thought losing their 9 was a big loss for them early on. And I think it affected their attack for a little bit earlier in the competition. And I thought then, is it Ménager being out as well was a big loss, because she's just like a linchpin of that side, galvanizes them, big moments, physical. But I thought their defense had been outstanding. And that's really like what was impressing me about the competition for them. And I thought, will they nullify this Black Ferns attack, which hasn't really been tested by a top level sort of top 4 side yet. But France actually came to play as well. New Zealand, I think, rose their game, or the Black Ferns rose their game. Like, that was a proper test match. And for me, that's the game of the tournament. Like, outstanding.
Yeah, without a doubt. The amount of hits that went in that genuinely, like, I watch rugby and I miss it sometimes. And then I watch some of those hits and I was like, I'm so glad I'm not on that pitch. But they lost Sansus early in the tournament. They lost Ménager, and I was like, that's it. That's their 2 key players for them. But Ménager actually managed to come back for the semi, which was incredible. Real quick turnaround there. And she was the one who was, making those big hits, like leading it. And she, I think, galvanized them as a team. But the kick, the last kick, and I really feel sorry for Joanne, because for those people who haven't necessarily watched a lot of French rugby necessarily play, she has a really solid boot. She's strong. She can get them from the sideline. She's calm. She's cool. She's collected. She, unfortunately for her, she bottled it, because the strike wasn't even right. There was
it was ugly.
It was so ugly. And she never kicks them like that. So for me, I wish she'd at least kicked it nicely and missed it, because it would have at least then just been, but she personally bottled it. And I think that, I heard some comments of, oh, well, it just came down to the 10 couldn't kick. And I was like, no, the 10 can kick very well. And previously she has pressure the occasion. They've never made a final before. It's a horrible position to put anyone in, unless you nail it, of course, and then it's wonderful. But
then you're Johnny Wilkinson-esque sort of in folklore forever. But if not, then it's a thin line, like a tightrope you walk either way, and being a kicker and immense pressure. And I agree, like, that game could have gone either way. Like, no one out and out deserved to win it, I don't think. Like, I think they both, showed that is probably the best advertisement for women's rugby we've ever seen. Like, I do agree. Like, as a rugby knows, the detail was high. I think New Zealand or the Black Ferns have really improved as this tournament has gone on. They've got an all-star coaching staff, and I just think they're slowly like refining areas of their game. Their set piece is catching up, and then that sort of Wayne Smith-esque attack, like, it's all starting to come together for them. And then let's get on to the final. Like, these are 2 polar opposite teams. It's going to be a styles clash. I think New Zealand are going to have to weather the England storm and the forwards, not get trapped in their own half with the kicking game and be pressured there. But when they're on the front foot, with some of the threats they have in that back line, like, it is really starting to pop off. Like, Fluher and Fitzpatrick in the centres of money. You've got Portia Woodman and Tui on each wing. You've got it's just been an evolution of the attacking game for the women's side for me, massively.
Yeah, hugely. And they are so dangerous ball in hand. And the pack has really stood up, because when they came over in November, they got embarrassed. They got really embarrassed by both England and by France by 50 points. They really got humbled. Yeah. But one thing that the Black Ferns do is whenever they lose, they learn and they come back. And yet through the tournament, they have been the team, and you can feel the energy around it as well. They have really come on. But what England have to do is stay confident. England, you're on a winning streak for so long. You win the tough games. Like, you've got this. England are still, I know that someone said New Zealand are the favourites. England are the favourites. They are. They've been performing way longer, and they can't get caught up with this aura that goes around, like with the All Blacks as well. The Black Ferns have an aura about them. They've got to ignore that. They've just got to go. They've got to play rugby. They've got to bully them, and they've got to, just do all the line out mauling that I was saying. Let's pass it, but actually just dominate in those areas is really important that they do that, and early on as well. So New Zealand just go, what has hit us here? So that's what I'm hoping
absolutely.
for.
Let's stomp the yard, as I like to call it. Like you've got, literally, especially with the pack, if you've got a chance of that dominance, you've really got to go for it. I do think, though, finals are one of those games where, like, the emotion, the occasion, it closes the gap at set piece. I've been in a few finals where I've thought, all right, we're going to roll these guys, or we might get rolled. And you just sort of bring, you know, your best energy to the game, that you sort of nullify that. So that's the worry for me, is that if the Black Ferns are able to dominate collisions in defence, if they are able to sort of handle England's maul and not let them just get points every time they get down there, then to me it's game on, and it's an exciting matchup. And what I say about my observation about England is, like, clear dominance. Is it 30 wins in a row now?
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
30 wins in a row. Like, how incredible is that? I think one of their key superpowers, or their strength of the team, is they are clearly the most professionalized, the most organized, the most detailed, players playing consistently the highest level of club rugby, coming in with probably as close to the most time together as anyone. But what this World Cup has done is it's given teams a chance to close that gap, because they've been in camp for a long time. Once you're at these World Cups and you're in your World Cup camp, you're basically in, like, full-time environment. And so the growth that you're able to see from these teams through the competition has massively, for me, closed the gap of how far England were ahead. Maybe if you'd done this in July, or if you'd done it at the Six Nations time, when now we get a real test of England's mettle with a team that's been together for a long time. There's no excuses for them not to be prepared or up to scratch there. And that to me now is game on.
Yeah, oh, completely. And the pressure is on England, because I think it's their final to lose. I think they're going to go out, they're going to smash it, they're going to win it. But if they don't, that's really going to be the shock thing, and they'll kick themselves, because this is their best place to do it. And New Zealand, they are tough. They are really, really tough. In 2012, we beat them 3-0 in the series when they came over here, scored loads of tries against them, really exciting. The next year we went to New Zealand and we got pumped. We got hit so hard. I remember coming back from that tournament just being like, I feel like I've been ran over. It was just, they were so physical, and they just cut out any threats. So they're a smart team, and they do learn. I think both teams have a trick up their sleeves for the final. I really believe that the coaches will have worked. Wayne Smith 100% will have been doing stuff in the set piece for New Zealand. They're going to do something funny in a defensive line out against them all. We're going to see some, like, creative things there, because obviously any coach coming in against England is going to have that up their sleeve. But England, I think, will as well. I think they'll have been holding something back for this final. I don't know what that is, but I think there is something else in the tank probably that they can rely on, because they're smart teams, and, everyone's got eyes on both these teams from the start. They'll tactically hopefully be something else.
Well, I think it's just like, it's like either team that wins has a massive opportunity for a catalyst for something really special. Like, you look at the Black Ferns at home at Eden Park, if they can lift the trophy there, like, that is incredible. The All Blacks did it in 2011. Like, that will be an iconic moment that will inspire more growth in the women's game over in New Zealand. But if England are able to go with the coverage, the amount of eyeballs on this World Cup compared to previous ones. I know they won in 2014, but to win this World Cup and then roll into a 4-year cycle with a home World Cup, that is, I think, a 3-year cycle. Apologies. 3 year because of the COVID. With a home World Cup, you've seen what the Lionesses have done, getting a country behind them. Like, how big a moment is this for the women's game, and is this for the Red Roses? Like, this is a catalyst to take them to a new level, fan-wise, recognition-wise, and I think commercially-wise for them going forward, to be a real revenue generators and sell stadiums out in the UK, or in England, I should say, consistently.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, we saw record crowds during the Six Nations. We saw 17,000, at times, and Gloucester sell out as well. Like, so there is amazing support there. This World Cup being in New Zealand has obviously meant crazy kickoff times for people.
Yeah.
There's people at home waking up at 3 a.m. to watch their team play, which is amazing. But yeah, for the Black Ferns, I feel that it would show that it's the first time that they've actually been invested in. So they've really, after they came over to us and got absolutely annihilated by us and France, they were like, right, we've got a home World Cup. We can't have this. We can't just go on the fact we've got good players anymore. Other teams have caught us up and massively overtaken us. So they invested in it. So if they win, it shows that actually this investment is worth it. And I hope that would continue, because there's actually been no discussions of what happens afterwards. Whereas England, they've been back for a while, and that's really great. And you can see with how they play, that's fantastic. But we're going to want to convert that and want to win it, and just have people saying that, like, they want to play rugby, and young girls growing up know that you could be a professional rugby player. That could be a career. Like, that's amazing. And it just, when I started, it was, have you heard that they've got a rugby team? Oh, I didn't know they played. But okay, cool, I'll go do that. Whereas now, girls that age can look up and go, yeah, I could go and play in an Olympics for sevens, or I could go play in England in a World Cup. Like, it's incredible.
It's incredible. Like, it excites me. I think it's just, long overdue, well deserved, and it's about time, and it's absolutely great to see. But Kat, it's been the pleasure to have you on. I think last thing we love to do on the Scrum Down is to put people on the spot, and I'm gonna put you on the spot with a prediction for the weekend. Yeah,
okay. England by 8.
Ooh, love it. Love it.
Can I put you back on the spot, and you got to say one?
I think it's going to be like a 3-point game. I don't know which way it's going to go. I think it's going to be similar to that France game. Like, I hope England can blow them out, obviously, like with just dominance. But I just feel like finals footy, mate. Like, especially when you're the underdog pack, you come out swinging like you got your back against a wall. So it's kind of like, to me, I'm wait and see if that dominance will be there or not. If it is, I think England could win by more, but I have a feeling it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle. So we'll leave it there. But Kat, absolute pleasure to have you on the Scrum Down, your debut. Thank you so much, and enjoy the week in Auckland, and enjoy the final.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Awesome to have Kat on the pod. She's a pundit, commentator herself. Great insight. She's played in that team. She's won a World Cup. She's been there and done it. No one better to talk through that with us. But now it's time to look ahead to the Autumn Internationals, which kicked off this weekend. We have Chris Jones from the BBC to go through all of that. Let's get into it. And we are joined by Chris Jones from the BBC, my good friend as well. Welcome back to the Scrum Down, mate. Let's get into it on the Autumn Internationals. How are we going?
Yeah, very good. Good to have you this side of the pond. We've got to catch up properly soon. But yeah, we're up and running with the Autumn Internationals. Loads to get at, isn't there?
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, would have loved to do it in person, but as you're a new dad, congratulations on that as well. You got a lot going on, and we'll do this remote.
Well, previously we'd have gone and got a coffee and had done a recording, and then maybe had a couple of beers or something. But with the Autumn Internationals, the World Cup, there's a lot on at the moment. You kind of get little windows here and there you've got to capitalize on.
Nah, all hands on deck, mate. I know the feeling. All right, so let's get into these Autumn Internationals. It was the real, we had a round before, but that wasn't the official window. This is the first round where you get all the sort of teams playing, and it was interesting, mate. You had some good games. You can always maybe tell that the Northern Hemisphere teams aren't quite maybe firing at their best, coming out cold. Even though Ireland looked sensational, coming out cold a little, where the other teams have been rolling in camp since July. That first one, to me, always is like the hardest one for the Northern Hemisphere to get out of the way.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And you definitely felt this with Wales, and you definitely felt this with England. Wales were on a hiding to nothing. I had a couple of friends asking, could this be the year? New Zealand are maybe a bit vulnerable, and maybe New Zealand are a bit vulnerable, but I didn't give Wales a chance, really. Just for all kinds of reasons, but one of them being the Welsh just aren't battle hardened. They're not ready to face a team that's been in camp for as long as New Zealand have. And I know they wouldn't have played before the Japan game for a little bit, but they had that Japan game, and then they were able to hit the ground running. And once you blow a team away in the first 20, even though the middle 20s, the second and third 20 were kind of close, Wales lost the first 20 17-0, and the second 20, I think, about the same score. So even though they kind of drew the middle 40, the other bits were like 35-0. So yeah, that was disappointing. And England fans, they probably should have seen this coming. I mean, Argentina weren't going to roll into Twickenham to make up the numbers. They had plenty of rugby this year. I was in Jersey watching England train last week, and a lot of the chat was about how they were focusing on team building, only did 2 training sessions in Jersey. It didn't look like they'd trained all that much, but it didn't also look like they were particularly cohesive. Ireland, you always get that level of cohesion because of the Leinster core. So yeah, exactly. England were mugged. England smash and grab job by the Argentinians, and I don't think England could have too many complaints.
No, I agree, mate. I think Wales, they had patches where they had some nice moments, and they scored some decent tries, but mate, far too easy for New Zealand to score when they got down to the 22. The clinical, but just made it look easy. And then I thought, a bit of set piece dominance as well, just putting them on the back foot. And that it's going to be a tough climb for Wales because, again, they're a bit like England. I can't quite tell you exactly how they want to play or, exactly like what their DNA is as a team. I think the England game, let's get into that one because I think that's the one that I want to spend the bulk talking about. It just looked rusty. It looked rusty. I think pedestrian at times is a way I would describe it. I haven't watched it on video back, but I was in the crowd live, and I just felt like they looked quite casual at times. They were doing enough to be ahead or control the game, but then just senseless penalties giving away in their own half, just keeping Argentina in the game. All of a sudden, Argentina go bang, bang. One very good try, well-deserved, absolute sensational. And the other one, just a bit of luck. And all of a sudden, England are in that, oh, snap sort of moment. And they had to try and recover. And I just didn't think they had the intensity or the gears in their attack or quite the dominance at set piece they would have wanted to take that game back by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah, and it reminded me of the Australia game last year. But it went the other way to how Eddie Jones would have wanted. So the Australia game, I think England had played Tonga first. So they'd got a bit of a run out. Then they played Australia, and they finished the autumn with South Africa. It felt as if England wanted to do this, Corbs. They wanted to play territory in the first half, and it was a wet day. Go maybe 9-3 up. Then maybe get a try from a rolling ball. Suddenly it's 16-6, and the game is done. Argentina chase it. England pick them off. They win the game 23-9. Eddie Jones in great form. Few of us in the media go, oh, wasn't special, Eddie. He goes, yeah, but it's 23-9 against a team like Argentina. What do you expect? We're rusty. We're going to get better. So it felt like one of those games that England were trying to win in second gear. Yet, when you get done by a set-piece try like the Pumas scored, then you get a breakaway, which may have been a knock-on, may not, but that happens in Test rugby.
That's rugby, robots. Mate.
That is rugby, and this is part of my concern with England. They are quite prescriptive. You feel Eddie Jones gets so inside his own head about how he sees a game going, how the ref is going to ref, how the conditions are going to affect things, how a team is going to play, and he almost wants to completely manufacture how the game is going to go. And when something like that happens, the Carreras breakaway, it changes everything. England then have got scoreboard pressure against them, did really well to get in the lead from being 24-16 down, and at that point they're thinking, go and put Argentina away. You're at home. You've weathered the Puma storm. You've weathered the storm, literally. Finished the game off, and they weren't able to do that. They gave away some dense penalties. As you will know way better than me, the set piece started to crumble, and those 2 penalties in the final 10 with a nail in the coffin. It meant the Pumas could spend time down in England's territory. And when England had to go 80 metres, it was too little too late for a side that we've never really seen go 80 metres. So it felt like a game that England wanted just to get through and build from, but they've lost, and losing can dent confidence and can get you questioning what you're doing. So, going to be fascinating to see how England respond now.
No, I agree, mate. I thought in attack, they just looked very predictable. I know it was wet. It heaved it down earlier in the day. It stayed dry for most of the game. But you could see Argentina at times had the handling. I think England had to try and force the boat a bit. They had good first off carries with a bit of footwork and gain line, but then they never like materialized much and did anything with that. And I think, you look at some of their bright moments, that Kokosiwa break on the outside, that came from good carry, then nice hands, then you get the gain line, and then England are in the mustard. I also thought, the Coles break, actually coming to the line, playing more, like those were their 2 line breaks of the day. I think they needed more of that. I think they just were too predictable, and Argentina go, well, if we stop the set piece and we make our tackles today, we have a real good chance of turfing this England side. And I think that was the worry for me. I thought England got good purchase when I think they could have kicked more. I know sometimes we criticize over kicking, but just putting the ball back behind Argentina and pressing them in their own half in that weather, like that's where, the Smith kick came through that got them some momentum down there. I think England needed to just tactically shift a bit as the game was starting to get away from them, and I don't think they had that in them.
Yeah, and maybe there would have been a case for, kicking longer and saying to Argentina, okay, we will out-kick you or try and run it back in these conditions, and I don't think the Pumas would have done. But then there's an example, which hasn't been picked up too much, but I saw it live, and I thought, that's a chance. And I saw it back when I rewatched the game. England have penalty advantage, and the ball comes to the right, and Jack Knowles on the ball, and he's got Farrell, Stewart, maybe Manu, and I think a forward hugging the touchline. And he puts a kick through with 2 Argentinians there. And you just think that does sum up England ever since the Rugby World Cup. It dogged them in the 21 Six Nations where they were kicking away ball. Well, you said that they could be kicking more. I think it's about being selective, isn't it? About when.
Yeah, I think selective. I just think if they're not getting go forward in the middle, then I think turn it to the boot just to try and pressure Argentina, and you'll get a bad kick back, a turnover, a penalty, and a platform to launch again. And I just think they weren't getting enough entries to the 22,
Yeah, 100%. And then you feel that when there are potentially a chance, and look at that way. I know Australia have been really mediocre the last couple of years, but they scored from their own line against France, and those opportunities are there. And I just don't have. And I saw this a bit with Wales. They would make a line break. They'd maybe get behind. And then Prieston would go left. And being in the stadium as I was, you've got the vantage point. Easy for us to do from the commentary box. It's not actually that warm and there was beer all over the floor. But anyway, from the commentary box, it's easy to go right. But it's those little split decisions, heads up, how to make an opportunity count, which are the margins are so fine in Test rugby. But look at the way the All Blacks did it in Cardiff. There was not much between the two teams when you look at the basics, territory, possession, line breaks, whatever.
Yeah.
But they've scored 55 points because they
I know.
decisions. And I still worry about England that if someone can get parity with their set piece, can get parity with their big runners, I don't have a huge amount of faith that if they get that one chance a game, they're going to take it. And if they talk all about this Rugby World Cup, and I think England fans must be sick of hearing about this tournament that hasn't even started yet. And Eddie Jones, I was on a call with him today, and he said, we actually took focus off Argentina because we're so worried about the long term. I'm sorry, but if I'm an England fan sitting in the rain watching them lose to Argentina, I don't want to hear about France 2023. I want to hear about winning the game in front of me and making sure my 106 quid a ticket is going to watching some ruthless, accurate rugby where the next 80 minutes is what counts, not the next 52 weeks.
I agree. And that goes against, Eddie in the previous World Cup cycle, which was more putting an emphasis on results, build it. You know what I mean? It was all about the now. And now it seems to be like, I don't know if it's because that 2019 final haunts him a bit like his 03 final. You know what I mean? And now that is really what he's here for. And that's all that he cares about, really, is righting that wrong and getting that. I don't know, that's speculation, but it's definitely plausible to me. And I just think England, I do think England are going to get better through the autumn. Like, I do think that was almost like Eddie called it like a training game or a training thing afterwards. That sounded kind of fitting to me of how England performed. They just weren't at test match clinicalness or intensity. Do I think that team can do it? Yes. I think the back line, we've been waiting to see Smith, Farrell, Tuilagi for forever. It didn't really light the world on fire in that game, but I do feel there's potential to get that combination firing better, to use Noel and Big Joe on the wing more, get them involved. I think England have more to come. They're going to have some tough tests once they get to the All Blacks and South Africa. Those are two teams that are, you know, humming at the moment, very physical, going to cause some problems. But for me, like, you can't ignore that England do have some clear issues at the moment that they have to address going forward. And you can't just kick the can down to 2023, because I feel that just gives me deja vu of what England did and what I was involved in the run into 2015. There were clear issues and selection issues and other things that we just kept pushing to a home World Cup, and you get to the big dance, pressure comes on and you're not equipped.
Yeah, and you're not the first 2015 squad member to say that, Alex. An analogy someone used with me is almost like a pipe building up with pressure, and the pressure kept coming to the pipe, and then in 2015 that pressure burst. And I think England under Stuart Lancaster played some nice rugby in 2013 and 2014, but it was always like, oh, we'll get it right at a home World Cup, home factor, the crowd and everything. But that can work two ways. We saw it with the All Blacks in 2011. You can freeze. And they won the World Cup, so it sounds harsh. But they froze in that final, and another day they get mugged by France. So, yeah, look, if Eddie Jones manages this, hats off to him. It has been at many a World Cup before. No one knows World Cups like him. But equally, no one should also know more than him about the variables that come with a World Cup. The luck, the refereeing, the red cards, the yellow cards, the injuries, Carl Sinclair going off, the bus being late. All of these things, some you can control, some you can't. And I just would worry that if you focus on something down the line and saying it'll be all right on the night, you're not looking at the here and now. And I've heard exactly that from you guys from 2015. There was a little bit too much focus on the future and not enough on the present. And I don't think that's a recipe for success.
No, because you have to battle hard on yourself to like stress tests of pressure. You have to put pressure on each performance, each result, because otherwise you're not used to performing under that pressure. If you alleviate pressure by saying, it's okay, next time, next year, that's what's important, all of a sudden you get to that year and you've not really had to operate under that pressure of like that result and how it works. You know, another thing I saw about Eddie, which I was going to ask you about, was, you know, I don't know who it was on Twitter, but one of the journalists talking about the lack of caps in some players and the chopping, changing, the way he changes his mind. Do you think that's a factor for England as well, or a worry? Because I do feel in the cycle to 2019, Eddie really benefited that Lancaster had blood, a lot of talent together. They'd had that time together. Then they had a surge under Eddie, and they peaked at that 2019 World Cup. Do you think that that's an issue for England? A lot of the chop change that Eddie's been doing.
100%. It has to be. You're dead right. Look at the last World Cup cycle. He basically took Lancaster's team and gave them, you know, that new manager bounce in 2016. Loads of things he did that were different. The players loved it. Great wins through 16. 17, they started to tail off. 18, they flopped. But Eddie was good enough to get them back on the horse for 19. Massively helped by availability of Vunipola, Tuolangi. They played all through 2019. And Lancaster never had the privilege of having those three massive dynamic ball carriers in their pomp. And that's my nagging concern, is that 2019 felt the time for Farrell, for Itoje, for Jamie George, for Mako, for Billy, for Manu, for Anthony Watson, for Johnny May, for Ben Youngs,
Courtney Laws,
for those guys who were all capped by Lancaster. All of them were capped by Lancaster. I mean, Ben Young's capped by Martin Johnson, as was Courtney.
And Courtney was as well, but yeah.
Yeah, the bulk of them capped by Lancaster. That felt their time. 2015 using all the hurt. 4 years of a new coach, new direction. 2019, that night in Yokohama, that felt England's time. So yes, a few more players have come through since. Freddie Stewart mainly. Ellis Genn just kicked on. But not a huge number. Marcus Smith, of course, but there are questions over how Marcus works with Owen Farrell. And when push comes to shove at the World Cup, what is that England midfield going to be? Has Manu got legs left in him? Is Anthony Watson coming back? Is Billy got legs left in him? Has Mako got legs left in him? Has Jamie George, these guys past 30? They might well do. Has Courtney? He'll be 34. All these guys might make it, and they might do what the All Blacks did in 2015 and go to the dance and absolutely smash it for the sort of England finale into the twilight.
Like swan song.
Into the sunset. World Cup winners, righting the wrongs of 15, righting the wrongs of Yokohama in 19. But it feels a risk, and a guy like Jack Van Poorvliet, I saw Owen Slot in the Times made this argument. He had to start against Argentina because he made so much progress in Australia. We know what Ben Youngs is going to do. You can always have Ben Youngs in the squad, can't you, Corbs, as the kind of break glass in event of emergency option. And he can go and he can do a job because we know with all his experience what he can do. But that felt the time for Van Poortvliet to start against Argentina and build on the summer. Instead, Young started, didn't go so well, and it felt like another missed opportunity. And there are some areas, such as in the second row, at scrum half, maybe hooker behind Cowan-Dickie and Jamie George. If there is the odd injuries, England will feel a bit light. Maybe on the wings, we're not, if May and Watson don't make it or Noel doesn't make it for whatever reason, is there enough rugby in Cokanasiga, Adam Radwan, Ollie Hassel-Collins? He's just bringing in Caden Murley from Harlequins. Do you know what I mean? And what happens if Manu doesn't make it? Is there another big centre? Mark Atkinson's been and gone. Ollie Lawrence has been and gone. Joe Marchand's been and gone. In the back row, Ben Earl's been and gone. So, do you know what I mean? Like that he's blooded players, but are they in a position to then come back, or has he cast them aside, and will he then go back to his Lancaster core come 2023? And does that Lancaster core have one more World Cup in them, which is something Eddie Jones raised himself just after 2019? So loads of questions, which England fans probably don't want to be asking at this stage of the cycle.
No, I agree. And I think this weekend against Japan will be interesting because, it's not a dud game. Like Japan they were competitive against the All Blacks in that game in Japan. Yes, it wasn't like the best All Black team, but this is a team that has time together, that play great rugby, that have, their own DNA, identity of how they want to play. Their set piece is probably going to be the big test for them against England. If they can hang in there, it's game on in that game. They tackle well. They're not easy to just bash and win collisions. They're a lot bigger in the back row and back five than some people give them credit for. I think England really need to turn up the intensity dial and can't think this is like another preparation game for those big two. They've got to bring it this weekend at Twickenham.
Otherwise, they could be in trouble, couldn't they?
Yeah, no,
like we saw agree. 2018, we saw what Japan did in Tokyo against New Zealand. If there's any thought, and the Twickenham crowd, and I'm not blaming the crowd here, but you've been there. The crowd turn it on when they know there's a big beast in town. They were quiet for Argentina. They might be quiet for Japan. England have to give them something to get off their feet about.
Honestly.
They have to. They have to. And I know it's not Eddie Jones's style, and he wants to play territory, and he wants to play a tactical game of chess. I get it. He's been around. He's coached millions of test matches. He knows the game like nobody else. But if he's going to get the crowd involved, unfortunately, they're not going to get off their feet for a kicking battle. They're not going to go, I think they're going to make a 10-metre territorial gain here. Stewart's shooting across. Smith finds grass. Line out on the halfway line. Come on, boys. They're not going to.
Yeah.
Whether,
net percentages, playing the percentages ain't going to do it.
It's not 82,000 rugby hipsters, who are going to go, this kicking battle's getting me going. So do England forget about the crowd, or do they say, do you know what, we might have to get them going a little bit earlier?
No, I agree, mate. Lots to look forward to, or lots to look ahead to for England, and a lot of question marks that we'll hopefully get a bit more answers for this weekend. I do also think, just as I'm finishing that, being in the crowd is an opportunity to play more music and get them into it. Look what France are doing. The thing looks wild over there. They played that. That was like the one or two moments that the Twickenham crowd, other than the odd swing low, got absolutely on their feet. Was a good jam that got the crowd invested. And I do think there's more that can be done there to energize the crowd, like I do.
Just on that quickly, I think there's a balance because the atmosphere is amazing in France. They've made it like a nightclub in the Stade de France. But equally, when that first scrum went down in the Argentina game, I didn't have a ref link. I wanted to hear the ref over the tannoy talk to like they have in the NFL with the officials, talk to both sets of forwards and hear what he wants from them. And they played like a little burst of music. And I'm like, fine if there's a big break or halftime, get crowd going before halftime after. But also you've got to appreciate that the fans are there for the rugby sometimes. And I just would want to hear over the tannoy, right, England want this, Argentina want this. Hearing them talk to me. Do you know what? The viewers at home
I'm
get
fine
that
with
insight.
that. I'm fine with that.
The viewers at home get it and the crowd don't. And that's something we cannot get to the point, mate, where people would rather watch it at home and they go, it's too expensive, cost of living crisis, it's cold, there's a queue, everyone's getting up the whole time. Get food and drink brought to people's seats, get the ref over the tannoy and start to make it more appealing to go to Twickenham rather than sit and watch back-to-back games on Amazon in the warmth of your armchair.
No, I agree. And I like ref. I think the refs, like the NFL, when they have those decisions, those chats, I think those should be PA'd through the stadium. I think it's better insight and it actually helps the crowd. I just think there's moments you can lift it. But let's look at two teams that aren't sort of struggling in the same way England are. I'd say Ireland definitely in that category. The continuity of Leinster and those team majority being made up from Leinster and Munster. Like, you see that they're able to hit the ground running from game one in the autumn. Probably wasn't their best rugby, but to handle a team like South Africa, which are physical as they come, play a tough game, like that they were in it at the set piece, they defended well, they had their moments with their quick ball and their attack. That was a proper test match, and to get on the right side of that opening game is a great sign for Ireland in this autumn.
100%, completely agree. It was about getting the win. Could have been better, as in when they had that lead, they had a buffer, didn't they, after their second try, the Mac Hansen try. But equally, if Springboks had selected a goal kicker, it could have been very different. So I think if you're Ireland, it's almost the best of both worlds. They weren't brilliant. They didn't smash the world champions. They were pushed really hard physically. Questions were asked. They still won. I think if you're an Ireland fan, you go, fantastic. We're fallible. We can be exploited in some areas. We need to get better, but we're still beating the world champions. Admittedly, Springboks have been a bit up and down, and as we said, they passed up a chance of points, loads of points. So yeah, I think it showed Ireland to be in a really good place. The fact that Jimmy O'Brien could just come into this team and hit the ground running off the back of an injury to Henshaw, McCloskey going off. That's that cohesion piece, isn't there? And that's where Ireland and England are worlds apart. And a lot of it is structural. Eddie Jones has to mesh different styles from different clubs. But he also gets them in camp a fair bit more than a lot of England coach ever got his players in camp. They had a mini camp in September just to refocus the minds about the England way. It's where at Test rugby level, a million times better than me, you need clarity, don't you? If you start chopping and changing style at Test rugby, given you're meshing different people together from all over the place, and given you don't have an infinite amount of time together, your messages, I imagine, have to be super clear, super accurate, and super consistent. Because if you're changing style from one camp to the next, I imagine it puts the players all at sea.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. And I think that the models are just so different from Ireland to England, and it's different sort of, hurdles, and they all have to cross. But I do think that centrally contracted under one thing, it leads to better results and an easier path to success in the international arena, at least. Okay, let's talk. The other game, which I thought was a worldie of a game, was France-Australia. France, another one of the top teams in the world. They, again, not at their best. Similar symptom for me in the autumn of a team that probably was a little bit rusty and lacked a little bit of cohesion. But man, big game players, some huge moments. And what about the Wallabies, mate? They play great rugby. They throw everything into it. Absolutely entertaining. The try from inside their own half was incredible. France, we didn't get one of those end-to-end Dupont moments, but that Penaud try at the end to win it. When the game looked like it, that's what England needed. Against Argentina, when they're stunned, what does a good side do? They go to their DNA and they pull it out the bag like that. And I thought Penaud's moment like that summarizes how France are, their identity, the belief, the team, and the sort of last 5-10 minutes of England contrast the two differences of where those teams are right now.
Yeah, and England had loads of armoury in the back line, but no one who could do what Penaud did. Cockney-Seeger's not as quick as Penaud. He's powerful. Jack Nolan, there's a lack of pace in that back three, which was kind of obvious the moment the team came out. Yeah. If you remember Johnny May, and hopefully the injuries haven't taken their toll on May, but if you look at what Johnny May did, say, in Paris in that 2020 game, scored 2 tries off his own back out of nothing. Sprint down the wing, kick ahead, try. Wow, 7 points. And that's where England, whether it is still Johnny May or whether Caden Murley could be that man, whether they're going to...
I just think Arundel injury is massive. I think he would have been the guy right now. Completely. He would have been the guy right now.
He's someone who just slipped my mind, but you're dead on, Corbs. If Henry Arundel, such a shame, and maybe he's still got a game or two in him this autumn, although whether they play him back to the far against the All Blacks, different question if he's fit, South Africa. But yeah, you're right. He did that in Australia in the summer, and it gave England a point of difference. And that's where I think Eddie Jones will be a bit more relaxed than maybe us in the media and the fans, because he's so confident that come the summer, everyone will be fit. He'll get everyone fit, and therefore he can go, right, who's in the best nick? Johnny May, or Henry Arundel, or Anthony Watson, or Ollie Hassel-Collins, or Adam Radwan if he shores up under the high ball, or maybe Caden Murley's the man. So at the moment we're going, where is that player for England? Eddie Jones will think, I've got them. You just got to be patient, and England fans have to be patient. But yeah, on France, you know, it was. I loved the game. I loved what Australia were about, because they've been really mediocre for a couple of years, and it's been kind of depressing watching England roll them year after year. I know they got that win in the first test in Perth, but 11 times they've played, England have won 10. All those games at Twickenham have been processions since Eddie Jones came in. If Australia are getting back, and I thought Holloway was great on the flank, the back line scored that brilliant try. If they get back, that is going to be massive for World Rugby. And if they can be consistent, because look at what is coming up in Australia. You know, 12 years on from your famous moment, 2025. It's going to be a Lions Tour, 2027 Men's World Cup, Women's World Cup as well in Australia. So Australia need to be strong and need to be consistent, and maybe that was the game where they realised they can mix it with the best. And I just hope that they can kick on. And I think it was a shame they didn't win. It would be nice to have them unbeaten. And France will lose between now and the World Cup. They will lose, and it's a question of when. And if you're a France fan, you just don't want that to be in that World Cup quarter-final. But it's side of a champion team, they could get away with the result, even though Australia maybe with a better side.
No, I agree, mate. I think that's a good place to leave it on these autumn internationals. Lots to come across the next couple of weeks there. And we'll probably, I'm sure we'll hear from you again to talk some of that through. But, mate, thanks for coming on. All the best. Enjoy this week, picking up all the scoops on what's going on, especially at Penny Hill Park. Keep me in the loop, and we'll speak soon, mate.
Top man. Nice to chat to you, Alex. Speak to you soon.
Always good to have Chris on the pod. Could literally chat to him for days, and someone who's so in the know with all that's going on right now. Great to get his insight, and great to cover the autumn internationals, because it's cracking rugby and more coming up through this month of November. And obviously next week's show will also be reacting to the Rugby World Cup final. But just before we sign off, I wanted to give a quick touch on USA Rugby. They kicked off their first opening game of the Rugby World Cup repechage qualifier against Kenya. Absolutely smashed them with a big result. Great to see them get off to a running start. They face Hong Kong next, who lost to Portugal in the first game. I think they'll be favoured there. I think the US was smart. They didn't rush all their internationals back into the starting team. Gary Gold backed the team that had been together through the camp in Colorado, through the games in South Africa, and I think that paid dividends for them. They looked on page, on script, they looked organised, set piece was running, they're starting to look more cohesive as a team, and then all of a sudden in this game, I feel you'll get AJ McGinty back, you'll get David Anuhu back, you'll get Greg Peterson back. Those guys are on the bench, top level players. They've had a week to get up to speed, to get on program. This is the best case scenario for the USA. It sets up a big game against Hong Kong, and then really the decider is going to be that last game against Portugal, which we'll keep covering, keep an eye on. But for now, that is a wrap on this week's show. We really appreciate all the support. Reminder to keep favoriting, liking, sharing, retweeting. Make sure you're subscribed to this. Subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page where our video shows on there. We appreciate the watchers on there. But for Alex Corbacero, all of us at NBC, thanks so much for listening or watching, and we'll see you again next week.